Welcome to Holistically Speaking. I'm Hilary Russo, certified holistic health coach and health and wellness journalist. This is an empowering place to explore self-awareness, self-love, and transformation through health, healing, and humor. By sharing life-changing experiences, knowledge, and guests with varied expertise, we'll explore who we are, how we got that way, and what it takes to be a happy and healthy grown-up. Mind, body, and spirit. I'm glad you're here. Fun fact. When I was an actor doing a lot of professional theater, I loved raiding the wig designer cabinet. Under careful supervision, of course, because those babies ain't cheap. But every time my dear friend Patty put one of her masterpieces on my head, I felt like I was a different person in a different world. It was truly an escape, especially when I was a redhead. It was fun. But having the ability to take these wigs off and know that I can return to my own locks underneath, well, that's what really made it fun. For Dominique Claire, and many like her, the story is quite different. You see, Dominique is bald and has been since she was a child due to an autoimmune disease called alopecia areata. And while it's more common to associate hair loss with men, being a bald woman generally comes with questions. Questions that sometimes are painful and can make one look in the mirror and wonder why. Why me? Much like going gray, which I prefer to call maturity highlights, thank you very much, hair loss is actually a normal part of the aging process. But that doesn't mean it doesn't impact our emotional well-being, no matter who we are, or how we identify, or what age we are. So on this episode of Holistically Speaking, Dominique shares her empowering story about why alopecia is her superpower and inspires you to get headstrong and embrace the beautiful being you are beneath the roots. Dominique Claire, thank you for being here. It's a pleasure to have you on Holistically Speaking and sharing your story and wearing those freaking awesome headphones.
Thanks, Hill. Hilary, Hill.
Yeah, Hill, girl, call me. Absolutely. Get comfortable. That's what this show's all about. And I'm really glad you're here because you're talking about a topic that really, I don't think is discussed enough, especially with women. And we are discussing, alopecia and how that is your superpower. So for those who might not know what that is, tell us, share your story.
No worries. So yeah, alopecia. So specifically, I have alopecia areata. Alopecia as a word just means hair loss, but alopecia areata specifically is a autoimmune condition. So for those who aren't familiar with an autoimmune condition, that means that the immune system believes that parts of the body are foreign bodies essentially and not meant to be there and attacks them. There's a vast variety of autoimmune conditions. For alopecia areata specifically, it attacks the hair follicles in the body, and that can be on the head, the eyelashes, eyebrows. As you can see, I don't have any hair on my face. I do have some eyelashes at the moment. We can talk about that if you want later, but anywhere on the body. So there's three sort of very extreme conditions within that. There's areata, which is patchy hair loss usually, universalis, which is all body hair, everything, and totalis, which is just your face, eyelashes, eyebrows, and scalp. And then hair loss in general, obviously there's so many different forms of it that can affect people of all ages, all nationalities, all sexes, and everywhere in between. So,
well, for you, what's really interesting and something you shared with me recently is that you have been bald since you were 5.
Yep.
And for a woman, our hair is part of what we look at as part of our beauty routine. It's really, we see hair as something that's feminine and we curl it and we have this, we go get it done and all of the things that embrace and embody part of who we are, which really is a false sense of security in a lot of ways, because here you are, this 5-year-old, and really in the majority of your life, you've not known that, but having that happen at such an early age and living with that, was it the norm for Dominique?
It wasn't. I mean, it's a really You speak quite well about, yeah. So women see their hair as like, and not women as well, like society in general paints femininity as this visual of a woman with beautiful curves, but not right, just the right size, not too big, not too small. Long flowing locks. I've had women. I had a hairdresser come up to me when I was 16 and said, "Oh, you've lost your crowning glory," and yeah, very, very uncompassionate statement to say to me at that age. But so it was really this thing that happened to me at such a young age and was so devastating, not only to me, but to my parents and my sisters who saw their little girl like really struggling to feel like she fit in. And that's the thing is like, one of the most memorable moments of my childhood was someone calling me an alien when I was, 6 or 7 years old, and me finally realizing like suddenly, because, at that age, you're starting to go out into the world more, you're more outside your family circle, you're going to, primary school, kindergarten, whatever. And like, that was the moment I really realized that I looked so different. And I knew that I would look different for a long time. And I had to start coming to terms with what that meant.
I can only imagine how difficult that must have been, especially when you think, and you mentioned the crown and glory comment, but it sparked something in me to think about the fact that royalty in parliament and the wigs, I mean, so much has to do with the hair and putting this object on your head that gives you power, right?
Mm.
It made me think like what you just said about the crown and glory and how you associate alopecia as being your superpower. Mm-hmm. And you don't need that wig. You don't need the hair. You don't need the covering. How have you truly embodied that? Because I find that really powerful.
Yeah, it's a great question. I could go on forever about it. So being so young when I had it, I always had, and I have a twin sister who has hair. So I've always had this like reflection of what I would look like with hair. But also had this constant companion that was protective of me and helped me make friends and was always, when people would make comments or say stuff to me, always there for me. So I think for me, like I grew up knowing I looked different, and I built a very strong wall around myself of people who protected me, self-protective, like statements, rote comments that I would say to people if they said something to me. I'd stare back at other people. As I got older and started to like really feel like a woman, I started to wear a hat a lot, and I did hide. And it wasn't until I was about 16 or 17 that I really took that off and just went with it and went bald. And the moment that changed for me was I just didn't want to hide anymore. And I never did. And I power to anyone, because I really feel that like if you can find a way to deal with alopecia that works for you, and whether that's wearing wigs, wearing hats, turbans, whatever, it's your way through, and you can still find courage and beauty and your superpower, even if you're using those tools. But for me, it felt very much like I was hiding from a young age. So I just really never wanted to do that. And so finding a way to just be out in the world and represent, I found a lot of support in advocacy. I found a lot of strength in talking to others with hair loss who needed support or were looking for support. And I really found, as I got older, I really found this inner ability to take my experience and look at it from a new perspective as a learning experience of how to live in the world and represent, because I was doing that passively for so much of my life. So finding this ability to really speak out and advocate for it has been a huge way that I've represented women, especially with hair loss. And as a performer, I'm a belly dancer. So I've done so much in the world without hair in front of people that it just is normal to me. But at the same time, I have that background that I can see how hard it can be for everyone else and for many people.
Okay, that's amazing that you mentioned the belly dancing, because that is such a sexual, in a lot of beautiful, it, it embodies the woman and the movement of the woman and her body. And we always see the long flowing hair, part of that is, do you wear wigs when you do that? Are you into wigs or?
So I didn't wear wigs till I was about 20 years old. And I agree, like belly dance has this very feminine aspect to it. And it was a dance form that I was drawn to. And to speak frankly, as a white woman dancing that form of dance, I've reflected really strongly on my past with it and how I want to move forward with it. There's a lot of conversation in the community about appropriation and stuff, so I want to be really conscious of that. Having said that, any sort of movement, I believe, can help with that, finding that feminine side of ourselves. Dancing, and belly dance specifically, does have that very typecast vision and look. So I did wear wigs for a long time when I started performing, and it wasn't until I found like the right teachers and the right group of people to support me dancing without hair that I really embraced it. And that first performance that I did in front of a number of my dance friends and my teachers and my mentors without a wig was just the most eye-opening thing, and it really changed my trajectory in life to out of dance and into feminine embodiment and other movement and embodiment practices. Yeah.
I remember feeling that way when I first tried Koya. Have you tried Koya dance?
I haven't.
I was actually on a retreat a couple years ago, and I was introduced to it because they were also on the retreat. And it's basically that just letting go and getting into the music and just the beat. And because sometimes dance in itself can be intimidating, right?
Definitely.
I'm letting go. I'm on stage. My body's moving this weird way. How do I look? I mean, we always go to how do I look? How do people perceive me? Which comes back to what you're talking about. But here you are. How do people perceive me visually? And then add the element of my body's moving in this crazy way, right?
Yeah.
Crazy and beautiful, right? But how did you get into that? Were you always a dancer and then belly dancing was, no, you just were like, I'm doing this?
Yeah. So I was 16 when I first saw a dancer perform in a restaurant. And I was like, I need to do that. So I spent about 2 years trying to convince my friends, as you do at that age. And no one would. Not a single friend wanted to do it with me. Obviously, there's a lot of misconceptions about the dance form, especially in Western communities. So, but I found a teacher I really loved and went for it. And I was with that school for, I don't know, eight or so years, and learned a lot and loved it. But it was a school that was very focused on that look and feel and how you perform and what you look like as a performer, which is when I started doing other forms of dance. So different fusion forms of belly dance or different fat chance belly dance is one of the forms, which is a style where you move as a group and it's like all group improvisation. So that's a whole other way to think about performance. Yeah, it's very interesting. But so then I moved into other schools and I did it, and I was performing professionally for a while and teaching in Australia before I moved to New York, where I started over again. And it wasn't until I moved to New York. So just before I moved to New York, I actually lost my elder sister to cancer. And, I stopped dancing. I stopped wanting or feeling confident to do that at creative expression because there was so much inside of me that I was trying to push down and shut down with grief and loss and that depth. So that shifted my relationship with dance again. And I started looking into more movement-based therapy, and feminine embodiment is the sort of modality I found that really helped me with that and really helped me process a lot of that grief with these movement, like this passion for movement that I already had cultivated.
How was it for you moving from Australia to the US, and how were you embraced here? What was your experience like when you came over here?
New York especially is like this crazy city of people, like New York City especially, is this crazy city of people who all are too busy doing their own thing to really care what the hell you look like or are doing.
So true.
So many different people here. It was because I came from quite a small city in Australia, and I'd only ever seen like maybe 2 other people with alopecia or hair loss. A lot of people assumed I had cancer and they'd ask me about it. You know, I don't have a problem with people who have cancer, but that is something that people with alopecia get a lot, and they get that question a lot. So it can be an issue of frustration.
But for you, as someone who lost a sister to cancer, does that hit you in a certain way?
It hits me differently than it used to, yeah. So this is something I've thought about a lot, just because I have a friend recently posted in a Facebook group I'm in about a doctor's assistant who asked her if she had, like, what type of cancer she had, like specifically that question. And that was a doctor in a situation who had her chart in front of her and still didn't look at it enough to realize she had alopecia. And that's the type of situation that's really, really frustrating. Ever since I was a kid, I've had to, like, you know, talk to people about alopecia and educate them. I always felt like I needed to do that, because otherwise they'd be like, I'm praying for you. What type of cancer do you have? And all of that sort of thing. And it took me a long time. I was in my teens before I could actually address that and correct them, because as a child, you're taught to respect your elders. So you're not going to go and correct them. And can be a very embarrassing moment. So it can be quite triggering from that perspective to be asked that question now. But then when my sister got sick and I went through that loss, and I went through her losing her hair, going through chemo, seeing it from that perspective, when people ask me that question now, it can have two impacts on me. I can either respond from a trauma response. So often I'll get quite frustrated and sad. It brings up a lot of grief for me, and I find the question very invasive. Having said that, you know, there's ways people can ask these questions without invading your personal space. You can ask someone, if you can ask them a personal question before you even ask the question. You can ask, you know, you can start with your own story. Oh, my friend's daughter, you know, has alopecia. Do you have alopecia? You know, there's ways you can inquire about what someone looks like that shows compassion and empathy and makes them feel safe. And I think that's really important, because as soon as you ask someone outright, if they have even, and if I know from my sister's perspective, if someone had come up to her after she shaved her head and lost her hair and said, oh, do you have cancer? Like, it would have put her right back in that hospital room or wherever they experienced it, you know? So it's a really inconsiderate question, regardless of if it's the right assumption.
That's so powerful to share that, because I don't think, I mean, as we know, their intention is not to,
of course,
recreate the landscape, because that's really what it is. Part of the trauma is that we have the landscape in the brain that we reflect back to the feeling we had at that time when we were, right? So we can go back to that landscape if we're not careful, but it's also our responsibility. And I love that you share this, Dominique, that it is our responsibility to come from a place of compassion, of empathy, maybe even of resonance even, which means, like, what would it be like if someone asked me that question? And if I was in that position, how would I want to? How would I want to be asked that question? You know, these are powerful tools that we build in our communication techniques, you know, and there's so many great ways to learn about better communicating. But by sharing that, hopefully some folks that are listening might walk away and be like, oh, you know what? That makes sense. I'm going to try this. So thank you for sharing that, because, you know, even I walk away learning something too, even in the work I do.
I'm glad.
But yeah. So for you, you know, coming to a new place and really embodying your baldness, you know, and I think that's where I want to turn things to. You know, we've kind of focused on the feminine side, and this is going to hit the guys out there too,
definitely,
who are wondering, you know, I'm losing my hair, I'm going bald, I am bald, and I don't want to show baldness. What would your advice or share be with the guys too?
Yeah, it's a great question. I mean, there's so much, Hill, that we know about male pattern baldness, and I think I don't want to touch on it too much, but there is a medical bias towards researching male baldness and having options for them. The alopecia community has a lot of research and stuff going on for it as well, but I always grew up thinking that men would deal with it easier. I'd look at guys around me and be like, and I was a tomboy when I was little because I felt like that was more in line with what I looked like as a skinny little kid. But, we see men bald all the time. You have like so many examples of really, really sexy bald guys out there. So you make an assumption. Oh yeah. So you make an assumption that it doesn't hit them. But I know especially from men I know who have alopecia or areata or universalis, who are out there representing, and they talk about their journey very candidly. And there's a huge Instagram alopecia hair loss community. If you're interested, check it out. But they talk about how openly it can affect their masculinity as well, and how they can feel less virile, less manly because they're losing their hair. And it's a tough journey for anyone to go through. I think for most people, regardless of your gender or even if you're non-binary, man, woman, whatever in between, it's a part of your identity is what it comes down to. So it's not just hair. You hear that a lot, like it's just hair, and it's not. It's your identity, and for many people, it's something they've had since they were young. They've had it their entire life, and suddenly it's going away. And doctors are telling them it's fine. It's not seen as, it's not even seen as important as many other medical conditions because it's just hair. So I would say there's a couple of things I would recommend to anyone, and that is like advocating for yourself with your doctors. I know I'm privileged to have the opportunity to choose when I don't like a doctor. Often I can find someone else. That's not everyone can. So using the tools you do have to advocate for yourself, finding a support network that knows what you're going through, whether that's a Facebook group. There's Facebook groups for hair loss. There's Facebook groups for alopecia areata specifically. There's Facebook groups for male pattern baldness, androgenic alopecia, which is female pattern baldness, essentially. All of these different groups exist. And the National Alopecia Areata Foundation is one for people with alopecia. That's, awesome. But, there's other groups out there for you, and the internet is a wide open place to find these people who you can identify with. There's Reddit groups if you're into Reddit. So finding people who understand what you're going through and being able to talk to them is huge. And also just knowing it's okay to grieve it. This is the piece for me that really came out when I lost my sister, is that loss is loss. Mm-hmm. I don't think there's enough understood about hair loss, and in the form of it's an identity loss, and we need to grieve that. We need to allow ourselves compassion and kindness and understanding that we are going through a loss. And it's a disenfranchised grief, because most of society just thinks it's not that big a deal until it happens to them.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Looking at it like it's loss, and I mean, the word hair loss, but when you put the word separate from hair and just think of it as a loss, I didn't even think about it that way. And look, I'm fortunate in that that's not a loss I deal with. I have other losses. We all have losses in our lives, right? But I think that's what goes back to being compassionate and empathetic about what some other person's loss might be. You might not identify with that specific loss, but that doesn't mean you can't have empathy and compassion for what their loss is, just like you would have for something that might not be physical, might be physical on me, that I'm battling,
Mm-hmm. Exactly.
Those battles, we win the wars together, right?
Exactly. Yeah.
So powerful that you shared that. I absolutely love that. So thank you. And I would imagine listeners will find value in that. Something I got to ask you, though, because I always have fun with this, being a performer for years and being on stage and wearing different wigs. I mean, it is like a different persona, a different energy with every wig. I remember being backstage. I don't remember what the show was specifically. I think West Side Story was coming up, so they already had the wig cabinet ready to go. And I was doing another show. But the minute and I knew the wig designer really well, and she would let me try stuff on. And it was like every time I put on a different wig, I was like a totally different person. I was embracing, whatever,
Yeah.
whatever that wig made me feel like. And I'm curious if you have that in your own,
Yeah,
like your own life.
definitely. Yeah. So when I did start wearing wigs, it was for dancing,
Mm-hmm.
but it definitely exited that world. And technology these days is incredible. Like the wigs that you see these days, you can't even tell, like at all. Like go to Instagram and do a search for like hashtag wig story or wig reveal and stuff, and it's very cool. But yeah, so I have like about 7 different wigs that I don't wear often because, well, one, I don't leave the house much these days, but also I like how I look, and I go out like it. It's most comfortable for me. But I have like wigs that I cosplay sometimes when Comic-Con was still a thing. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
it is, but not in the last 2 years. So I have wigs for that I keep around that I wear sometimes. Yeah, I had a lot when I first started wearing them. I had a lot of fun with it, and had like bright red auburn wigs. The best wig I have is a vacuum wig, so it's like a $5,000 human hair wig that vacuums onto your head. So that's what I used for dancing because I could like do hair flips and all this stuff without it falling off. I felt quite secure. But I feel like it's up to the individual. I think it's a lot of fun. And I know so many women who have so much fun with it, and men as well. There are wigs for men. If that's something that you'd like to explore, there's a lot of information online about that as well. But it definitely gives you the opportunity to feel different and outside of yourself and explore that element of your personality that may not come out.
Yeah,
When you don't have
I
hair,
definitely
or when
feel
you're stuck looking a particular way.
that's how I felt. It was like a whole different personality, and it was enjoyable. But for you living it every day and really embodying it for the majority of your life, well, first of all, I mean, you look it's the confidence, and you have this. I mean, I look at you and I'm like, beautiful, like confident. Just you are
Thanks, so.
owning it. Yeah, you're owning it because. And that's so important. So that's part of your message, which I want to move into, is alopecia is your superpower.
Yes.
So share a little more about that.
Yeah. So for me, I reflect on my experience with alopecia as, a bald woman for 3 decades, revealing my age a little bit there, but which is fine, whatever. So age gracefully, everyone. It's beautiful. So I've had time to reflect on that, and through every stage of my journey with alopecia, I've gone through ups and downs. Like I've felt really strong with it. I've felt really depressed. I've felt brave and outgoing, and I've felt like I want to curl up in a ball and cry. It has its up and down days, like anyone with any long-term condition will tell you. What I found, though, as I reflected on it, and as I really started to, use my embodiment practices, use meditation, work on my self-worth, that there were these elements that came out that I knew were part of me that would never have happened otherwise. My compassion for those who look different. I'm a huge advocate for appearance diversity. I feel like I can relate to so many people's different stories, not their exact experiences, obviously, but because of my own, I can pick pieces of that out and say, yes, I've had obstacles too. I see you. And I think that's a superpower. Like I feel like compassion, understanding, and empathy are superpowers that are massively missing in our society. We really don't spend a lot of time connecting with others in a way that makes them feel seen and heard. So feeling like I'm able to do that definitely feels like a superpower to me, that I don't think I would have had if I hadn't grown up looking different from other people. Yeah.
So what's the mission going forward? I know you have events that you're going to be continuing. Yes. You had one, which I had a chance to watch, which was great. But what is going forward for Dominique Claire as she continues to be the shero, creating superpowers and sharing that with men and women? I'm sure you connect with both. And just, and as you said, non-binary, it's for anyone. I mean, whoever and whatever you identify with, just owning your crown.
Yeah.
I mean, It's the crown chakra. It's the beginning of everything. It's the top, you know?
Yeah.
So how are you moving forward in that with power?
Yeah. So I have got a one-on-one coaching program I launched earlier in the year, which I'm really excited about. It's called Find Your Alopecia Superpower for obvious reasons.
Brilliant.
It's open to anyone with hair loss. I come at it from a feminine perspective, but I'm open to talking to men about it as well. It's really, for me, I'm waiting to see how that unfolds. I'm writing constantly. I have new blog posts every week, almost, or every month. So every 2 weeks, probably about, to be transparent. Whatever I'm responding to, I'm writing about. And I'm very active on Instagram, constantly attending events. So many people, other women especially, and other individuals out there doing this advocacy work. So I'm really trying to pull together with them and pull the strings together of what everyone's doing and share that as well, because I think it's really important. So what it looks like for me at the moment is just trying to get my program launched, work with people one-on-one, and keep doing events like this and talking to people and advocating and putting my voice out there. I'm really trying to escalate visibility and represent. Yeah.
Yes. Get out there, girl. Get out there. Okay, let's have a little fun, shall we? Although I think I love chatting with you. We're going to play a little word association game. I do this every episode with my guests. Yeah. And what I would love for you to do is just come back with one word after I throw out a word. And these are, again, my listeners know this because I do it every episode. When I'm finding words that you say during the episode. So yeah. So just come back with one word. Okay. All right, here we go. Beauty.
Alopecia.
Okay. Bald.
Women.
Hair.
Stupid.
All right.
No offense to anyone.
No.
Oh my God.
I love it. Whatever comes to mind. I do this with my clients too. Belly dancing.
Beautiful.
Loss.
Sad.
Twin.
Real.
Compassion.
Superpower.
Empathy.
Amazing.
Yeah. Okay. I'm trying to think of another one. Did I say bald?
You did. And I said woman, but, bald everyone.
Yeah, whatever. Yeah. Oh, you know what I didn't say? I didn't say hair.
Yes, you did.
I did. Oh, you said stupid.
I said stupid, yeah. My least graceful moment through this entire interview.
That's okay. I went out of order. I was like jumping around my page as I'm like, did I say that? I'm like, okay, you know what? Sometimes your word sometimes the word you come back with immediately, and I always try to get people to like do it quick. But then having a moment to think about it, especially after there's a number of words, your word can change. So it's the psychology of things. So it's interesting if I throw out a word twice, sometimes I do, that your answer is completely different from what has gone into your brain. So interesting. Okay. So that was fun. Here's what I want to do. I want to hold space for you to share with listeners. What would you like them to take away from what we've shared today? What's Dominique's message to the world?
Yeah, I think my message is the world is full of people who look different. We all, identical twins, even in that case, sometimes they look different, right? So my message is just accept that, embrace it, allow it to be, and stop creating these standards of beauty and narrow definitions of normal, in inverted quotes, around what we should look like. I don't want to lean on the trope of it's what's inside that matters, because I don't think that's necessarily true. What we look like is important because it's how we represent ourselves and how we express ourselves in this extremely real 3D world that we move within. So my main message is just come to terms with the fact that people look different and let them look different and be beautiful and be who they want to be and feel amazing and live a visible life regardless.
I love that. And it reminds me of, there's a quote, and I'm totally going to butcher it, that you see a lot. There's so many memes out there about not trying to just be yourself because everyone else is taken, something along those lines, right?
Yeah.
It's so true, though. I mean, we live in a world of comparison with the internet. I grew up when the only comparisons there were the other girls around me or magazines or TV. And now you add that element of the internet and we're always beating ourselves up, how many followers, how many this, she's got this, he's got that, they've got it. We need to stop that. And we need to just be in our power of who we are. And it's hard. It's hard, but you leave a really valuable message there because, you're unique. Everyone's unique. No one's like us. So live in your superpower. I'm trying to figure out what my superpower is. I don't know. I'm going to figure that out.
Go do it.
I will. It'll
search. Right?
You. It's a constant search. What?
It'll liberate you.
Anyway, thank you so much for being here. It was a pleasure having you, sharing you with the world. And
thank you.
And we are definitely going to have more conversations, and we'll share your information on your upcoming events and let people know the power behind Dominique Claire. Thanks, girl.
I love it. Thanks, Hill.
You can learn more about Dominique, her embodiment coaching, and her upcoming events by checking out her website. The link is on the podcast page. And if this or any Holistically Speaking episode resonates with you, let me know. Your shares matter. So leave a rating or review and tell me what's on your mind. I appreciate your support. If you have a great story to tell or would like to learn more about how you can work personally with me on your own healing journey, just connect with me on my website at hilaryrusso.com or hit me up on social media at Hilary Russo. Holistically Speaking is produced by Alan Seals with music by Litbone Redding and hosted by yours truly. I'm glad you stuck around. So thanks for listening. And as always, be kind to your mind and don't forget to laugh.